Okay, for our introduction of the nervous system, we have the main function, and the main function of it is that it's in charge of thinking and thought processes, motor processes, and how it all works together to maintain homeostasis. There's two separate parts of the nervous system, which is the central nervous system and the peripheral. The central nervous system is mainly composed of the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral is in charge of five senses, motor functions, and the motor functions divides into two sections of the somatic and autonomic, and the autonomic is divided into the parasympathetic and the sympathetic.
Okay, for communication, we have, it's located, well, your communication centers are in the parietal and the occipital. That part of the brain is in charge of touch, pressure, pain, and temperature, and it's in the somatic sensory area, and it recognizes the different types of touch. In the somatic, terminal neurons communicate with other cells, interneurons make sure everything is in the right place.
So for our functions of the things that I previously was talking about in the peripheral nervous system, there's the sensory area, which is just in charge of the five senses, and it's afferent, which means it goes up to the brain, and then we have the motor systems, which is efferent, which means it comes from the brain and just controls like active movement. So we have the somatic, which is just like I said, active movement. It's in charge of skeletal and voluntary responses. And then the automatic is involuntary, and that separates into the parasympathetic and the sympathetic system. So parasympathetic is just like when you're sleeping and when your body's calmed down. It's in like rest and digest. So digestion and urine production go up, and breathing and heart rate go down. And in the sympathetic part of it, you produce a fight or flight response. Your heart rate and breathing go up, digestion stops, pupils dilate, and sweating occurs.
So for protection of the brain, the dura mater is the outer layer, the actinoid mater is in between layers. There are no blood vessels, and it resembles a spider web. The dia mater is the inner membrane, which contains nerves and blood vessels to nourish cells, and the cerebrum is the outer that you see on like a picture of a brain. It's the wrinkly large part of the brain. It's the largest in the human's higher mental function.
So for integration, we have the four separate lobes of the brain, which are the frontal, temporal, parietal, and occipital. So for the frontal lobe, it's in charge of reasoning, thinking, and language. So your decision making comes from the frontal lobe. Your temporal lobe has some of the senses like hearing, taste, and smell. The parietal lobe is in charge of pain, like touch, pain, and the somatosensory. And the occipital lobe is in charge of just like seeing and your vision.
So for organization part of the brain, it's located in the frontal lobe, which the frontal lobe controls your emotions and your social adjustment and impulse control. The functions of that part of the brain are organization, judgment, self-monitoring, and your emotions. And the organization is ability to create logical places to store items and information that you may need later.